Hello and welcome to the Executive Pill, the podcast where brilliant leaders from every corner of the world share their secrets to help you lead smarter, influence better, and succeed faster. Think of it as your cheat code to navigating leadership with clarity and confidence. I am your host, Alex D. Tremble, CEO of GPS Leadership Solutions, and over the last decade, I've had the privilege of helping executives at Fortune 500 and mid-level companies, as well as government agencies, navigate leadership influencing culture. This podcast is your shortcut to learning what works from the best of the best. And I promise you this, what you're about to hear today is not theory, it's proven strategies that can help you be successful today. And before we jump in, here's a tiny request with a massive ripple effect. Please do us a favor and click that like button. Why? Because we live in the attention economy. Your click is the fuel that powers the life-changing ideas to reach more and more people. Your click is not just a random clickable button, but it really is the energy that leads a movement. Now, let's make today extraordinary together. So, you are going to, when we sit down, everyone get comfortable because we're about to have a rock star on today. Okay. You can tell because this man has these amazing glasses. Today we're having with us Mr. Keith Parris. Keith currently serves as the VP of Contact Center Operations and Technologies at BCU. In this role, he is responsible for BCU's U.S. mainland and Puerto Rico contact centers, technology operations, and vendor management. Prior to this role, Keith has served in a multitude of leadership roles in customer experience, sales, operations for several large corporations, including Dyson, BP, and Amazon. This man is an absolute rock star in what he does. And I can't wait to jump in. How are you doing today, kind sir?
I'm doing great, thank you, and I appreciate that kind introduction. I'm hoping I can keep up to that level of awesomeness that you just kicked us off with. Thank you.
See, and the man is so humble. See, here's the reality. We could start off this conversation with reading your 6 to 10 page bio because you've accomplished a lot. And I always say accomplishment. It's not just having quote unquote senior roles, which yes, accomplishment, but two, you've impacted a lot of people in regards to a topic that we're going to dive into a bit later, which is mentorship, right? I guess my first question, I want to just kick us off with asking is, what do we need to know about your past or your current situation to understand who you are and how you see the world?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. And I think, where I'm at today obviously has been shaped a lot by previous experiences, personal and professional. On the professional side, as you mentioned in that amazing intro, I've worked for some of the largest corporations in the world. So spent some time with BP, British Petroleum, a bit of time with Amazon and also with Dyson. So large companies with a big bottom line focus. And what I think has shaped me a bit is that there's a balance between the bottom line focus and the focus on your people, your customers, your members. And the intersection of those two paths is where I'm at right now. And I think where I'm at BCU, it's a company that is obviously a credit union, really, really focused on its members, focused on growth, obviously, but focusing on how can we improve our members' lives, their experiences, their financial health. And I think going down that path of a large for-profit world where it was about gross margin, it's about profit, it's about revenue, to a space that is, while it's still a focus, is really focused on the people, both the employees and the members, is a big one for me. And that's kind of shaped, my last 3 years, after coming out of the quote unquote large corporation grind.
Well, can I ask you what did you bring with you from that big, large corporation playing field to where you are now that has either made a significant impact or you believe kind of positions you and or your team for success different than what other people may be doing?
Yeah, that's a question that I think about a lot because everything that I brought with me wasn't all positive, right? So coming from those large corporations, you bring a cutthroat type of mentality where you're really focusing on bottom line profits, shareholder value, things like that. And while that's good, if you tip too far one way, you can then start to lose the human element of it. So while I brought some of that business acumen with me, around how do we drive efficiency, right? How do we do things that, adds value and reduces cost and things like that? What I really brought with me is a sense of curiosity. I'm a big process person, so I really like to understand why things are done a certain way. Can we optimize them? Asking those why questions multiple times, and really kind of pushing those boundaries to understand, what can we do to continue to elevate?
That's so interesting. So one of the conversations I mean, honestly, just feels like I'm again, what's the word? Deja vu. I'm just Groundhog Day is over and over and over. Is this idea of integrating AI into our systems, into our cultures, into our workforces, and how easy it can be or will be to throw the people out with the bathwater. At least use that example, because you can just quote unquote rely on AI, but from everything I am reading and what I'm hearing from the organizations I work with is that there is a need to be very, very intentional with, yes, utilizing the efficiencies that come with that technology, but understanding that people are going to be essential for at least a long time still. Because I'll be real, when I call a company and I get a and I get a recording where I got to push a button here and a button here and a button here and a button here, I just get really frustrated. I do not like it, and I generally will not call them. So having those people makes sense. So how do you navigate both of those worlds, the efficiencies and caring about the people with the technology coming about?
Within the contact center world, AI is probably the most prevalent from a technology space, right? I mean, that's where you hear lots of people talking about where AI will be implemented, where you'll see the biggest bang for the buck. I respectfully disagree with that because I think, number one, the level of AI that we have right now, I call it big A and small I, right? It's artificial, but it's not that smart just yet. It's going to get there, but a lot of it, what I've seen is the touting of the impacts of AI is really based on how strong your existing infrastructure already is, right? So if you're going to build something, right, you need to have a very strong base. Think of it as if you're going to build a storage facility, you got to first pour that concrete, right? You got to have a strong, stable base, then you can build up from there. A lot of companies don't have that strong concrete base in place, right? And it's not just technology. Sometimes it's around your knowledge management. Sometimes it's around your processes. There's a lot of things there. And so I think a lot of times when you hear the upcoming wave of AI and the efficiencies that it drives, there's an artificial glass ceiling that we're going to get to pretty quickly until people start to rebuild, and then you'll really see the massiveness. All that being said, I do not believe, that you're going to see a massive disproportionate wave of less people needed for customer service and the member experience, because what I think you're going to see is AI is going to be able to handle the easy, low-hanging fruit. And I've got lots of examples that we've done, within our organization, between leveraging a bit of AI, but also kind of education, right, to the members so that they can kind of do these things themselves. So I just don't think you're going to see this big wave where all of a sudden, there's 20, 30% less contact center people in the world, because, AI is not going to be able to handle those really complex things. And I tell my team all the time, people don't wake up and say, I can't wait to call my credit union today. They don't, right? So they're calling because they've reached a level of effort and frustration that they've tried to solve. To your point of, I got to call and press buttons. No one wants to do that. So they're going to try to fix it themselves. There's a reason why WebMD is one of the most searched websites, right, in the world, right? Because people go there first before they want to go to their doctor.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where we are. So I think it's coming. I don't want to kind of minimize it or poo-poo it. And there are some great players out there in the space, but I think the demise of people is vastly overblown right now.
You know what's honestly, I'm just going to throw this idea in there because that's something I've been thinking about a lot recently. It's the idea of, I'd love to hear your reaction to this actually. Oh my God, this would be a great turning point also. Think about mentoring and developing people. So I utilize and my clients utilize AI a good deal for certain pieces, right? And I was at an event recently, speaking at a conference, and this organization brought up this really great AI protocol they created and implemented to their organization, and it allows them to um, help their leaders have coaching conversations with their staff members. And like, they kind of feed in data, they'll even feed in the recording of the conversation, the initial conversation,
Mm-hmm.
whatever, and AI will tell them what to say. And initially, everyone's like, "Oh wow, it's so cool, it's so great, it's so efficient." It's really, but then for me, I just started thinking about like, well, that is the answer, but what do you learn? Like, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
what do you literally learn from that? But really nothing, because you have your answer, but it's not the answer that teaches us, it's the journey, right? It's the messing up, it's the feeling uncomfortable, it's all those things that allow us to understand, oh yes, okay, maybe I had this difficult conversation with Keith this one time, but now next time I go in and have a conversation with Tyra or Tim or my wife, my spouse, and I kind of feel like, oh, I know how to navigate this. Like, we think we need to be very careful with understand that AI may be providing us with an answer, but the answer is not how we learn.
Not only, and that's a great point, because the answer is not how we learn, right? Totally, right? But the piece in that entire example that was missing is the ability to apply a level of empathy and understanding to that interaction, right? Because AI will say, person said this, you should have said this was incorrect. Next time you need to say this. I've just given you the answer. But what AI can't really help you with is understanding, why did you give that answer? What happened in this interaction that made you think this was the appropriate response? Did you just forget? Did you make a guess and you were wrong? Did you have a gap in your knowledge management system? So you actually did the correct, process, but that just happened to be incorrect. That part, right, to your point about the journey, how did we get there is the biggest thing that we learn, because I can give you the answer all day, but I need to understand why you felt it appropriate to take that path, or to arrive at that answer, because you could have done it the correct way and still got to the wrong answer because of a situation or environment outside of your direct control. So I always worry when I hear AI being used in kind of quality assurance sort of business cases. I get nervous if I hear someone saying that they're going to do that for all of their interactions, because you need that person in there that can apply empathy and sympathy and understanding and kind of real world analysis, right, before you just say 2 + 2, it should be 4. You said 5. You were wrong. Let's move on to the next one. Let me understand. Did you think that they said 3 + 2? Right? Let's understand that before we just jump to you were wrong. Here's a correction, and let's go to the next one.
That's so spot on. I heard this example a while back, a few months ago. I really loved, and they said that tonal piece and the empathy piece, it doesn't always get captured. Now, again, at some point, yes, I'm sure AI will be able to capture tonals and things like that. I get it. They use the example. They said the sentence is, "I didn't say Tom hit the dog." Okay, so what does that mean? Well, that means that's a very different sentence to say, well, I didn't say Tom hit the dog, or I didn't say Tom hit the dog, or all the different emphasis points changes
Yep.
the complete structure of the sentence and what's being conveyed. And again, just even taking this out of the AI world, like communication is something that all of us do, but we get it wrong so easily, so often. It's like, this is not easy to learn.
Not only is it not easy to learn, I think the advent of more advanced technology reduces the need for that person-to-person communication. And then as a result, you can misread a lot of things because, if I'm not looking at you, right, if I'm, if this screen was blank right now and I could just see myself for the entire time, right now you're giving great nonverbal cues. I wouldn't be able to see that. So I could say to myself, man, Alex isn't really paying attention to this. This is a waste of time. This isn't great. No one's going to like this. I don't know if I should keep doing this. But simply because we have that ability to kind of still inject the person into this, right, it kind of changes a lot of things. And I think that is the biggest hurdle for AI that we really need to figure out is AI is going to be great for a lot of things. But when we get to the point that we need that person-to-person contact, we have to strike a great balance of AI versus we got to get someone on the phone or just walk into an office and speak to them and figure out how we fix this.
The other piece you make me think about now is the idea that during COVID, they call them COVID babies, a whole young generation that was away from their counterparts for a period, and they didn't learn how to socialize the same way. And that was what, a 2-3 year period-ish?
Easily two, yeah.
Easily two. And they are having that was a significant impact. Only 2 years. And you think of people relying on AI and tools to just tell them what to do, that it reminds me of the phone number. Like, I remember when I was a kid, or when I was younger, I remembered people's phone numbers like that. Like, I just boom, 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 boom. Now I don't have to think about phone numbers anymore. I rely on my phone. And so, I mean, I literally know my phone number, my wife's phone number, and I know 911. So let's see. I got that one down. And that's natural, right? Because we're not utilizing that skill. Our brain says, okay, I'll focus our energy somewhere else. And then again, what happens when we rely too much on this technology, this other human pieces, and we ultimately lose those abilities to build those connections and those relationships. Where I'll just tell you, every leader in sales, VPs, SVPs in sales, they're all saying, okay, yes, your AI is coming, but when it comes down to sales, it's even more about relationships moving forward, because everyone will be able to have the same data. Everyone will be able to have the same, little wonderful, beautiful proposal. Who do I have a relationship with? Who do I trust?
You know what? So before I respond to that, the phone number piece, I was just telling someone that the amount of phone numbers that I have memorized is less than a handful. And the phone numbers I do have memorized give me no value right now. It's like my phone number from the house I grew up in 35 years ago, right? I know my best friend's home phone number from the DC area who does not live there anymore, right? So it's funny when you think about it that way. To your example about, sales and the personality side of it, right? And I think it's really, really important in sales because unless you're selling something that is brand new, a very unique niche, and no one else has it, you're probably selling a commodity. You're selling something that someone else is either already has on the market, is bringing to the market, or it's a familiar sort of service or product. And when you think about things like that, you then tend to gravitate towards where do you have that connection? Where are you buying something from where someone makes you feel comforted, makes you feel understood, or they at least give you the impression that they are there to serve your needs while also getting their own needs met at the same time. AI is not going to help with that. I think AI will help you get ready for that proposal. AI will maybe help you kind of gather some more data than you couldn't get in such a compressed time frame. Maybe it'll help you with that. But if I'm trying to sell you on something, I need to be able to sit down with you and kind of build that relationship and start the journey there rather than just saying, oh, AI said I should go talk to Alex because Alex has this need. Hey, Alex, I have a need. Alex is going to laugh me out of the room because Alex is going to say, you don't know anything about me. And that's not the way to kind of build a relationship.
Well, I'd love to just then make that this swing when we're talking about building relationships. How do you? Well, let's ask twofold question. What has How has mentorship impacted your life? And I'm going to ask you, how have you gone about building effective mentoring relationships with individuals who are higher than where you are, even right now?
Yeah, for me, mentoring, being a mentee, it's probably the most critical thing that we can do as leaders, up and down, right? So going both ways. And earlier, when you kicked us off, you talked about the ripple of a lake, right? You talked about how far out that goes, and that's how I view mentoring, right? Is that one little pond, that one little stone, you throw it in the pond, and that ripple goes out a lot farther than how far you threw it. And that to me is kind of the essence of mentoring right there. I also want to make sure that people who look like me can aspire to get where I am because they see someone who looks familiar to them in those roles. So that to me is kind of another part. Outside of business, I've been a basketball coach for probably 20 years. I recently, quote unquote, retired. But I coached for a long time. I coached at the small college level. I coached travel basketball. And believe it or not, I still have lots of relationships with my players, their families from 10, 15 years ago. On the professional side, my mentor, his name is David Wade. I will make sure and tag him so he sees this on the social media. He was the leader of the Air BP business here in North America, right? So an African-American man, wildly successful. He's an engineer by trade. And he, to this day, he is still my mentor. I can call him. I see him a couple times a month. We're on a group text chain together because having the ability to kind of bounce things off of people that have been where you are is critical. But also being able to listen to people that are trying to get to where you are is the biggest thing. There's a common misconception, in my opinion, about mentoring, which is I'm just giving you all this advice. I'm just giving you the blueprint of what I did, and then that way you can go do it. And that to me is not entirely correct. I think mentoring is kind of being a travel guide on your journey, but it's your journey. I'm here to kind of support your journey. I can point you to where the sites are, but if you want to go see something else, I'm there to support you, in that journey. And I can leverage some of my past journeys to kind of help influence, how you view certain things. So that to me is kind of the big difference. But, mentoring to me, I have a few mentees at my current role. I have some mentees from previous roles. I still have a mentor right now. At roles that are higher than me. And I think it's really, really critical to not only success, but also avoiding pitfalls. When you have someone that can give you another view, I tell people a lot, early in your career, take a job that either stretches you or a job that you don't think you will like. Mm-hmm. And even if you don't like it, it's a lesson. I can tell you the job that it was for me. Okay, it was a finance role in BP. I'm not a finance guy. My undergrad is in finance, but I'm not a finance guy, right? I'm not built to sit in front of Excel and kind of, look at numbers all day. But I did it for a year and a half, and it showed me what I don't like to do, right? And I tell people that one of the biggest lessons, I struggled through this role, but it was one of the biggest lessons for me to really understand where my powers are and where, if I want to be successful in a certain realm, I need to improve my powers over here. And those are the types of journey highlights I can give people as we're talking about a mentoring relationship. But it's not a black and white, do these 14 things, and when you get to number 15, right, you're there. There's that visual on what success looks like, and people think it looks like this, but it's actually like this, and it goes back over here and does all this other things and then ends up over here. That, having that journey with you or having that guide with you to kind of help you navigate all those, I think is what a mentor really is.
So Thank you so much for that. There is a few things I want to, I guess, put on the table. The first, though, is as you talk about mentorship, we do a lot of work in this area because we work with executive teams, and then we always end up getting pulled into succession planning. And one of the things I always tell them is like, it's really, really easy to say, well, we're sending this person to learn how to do budgeting or finance or marketing or whatever it may be. And I'm like, yeah, like there's classes for all that stuff. But you know what organizations typically do not teach their aspiring executives is political savvy, how to navigate those potholes. And a lot of that does come from mentorship and advocates. But if you're not intentional, if an organization not intentional about it, all they're doing is hoping. They're hoping. They say, I love this person. They're really great. Let me hope that they figure out how to navigate these organizational politics. And if they figure it out, then wonderful. If they don't, darn it, we've just invested a whole bunch of money who's someone who we could actually save. What are your just thoughts and reactions to that?
I think you have to be very intentional with the assignment of a mentor if you're assigning it, because you have to have, and whoever the assigner is, I think has to have a great EQ, right? To really understand how and where this mentor can help this person navigate, right, whatever the political environment is of your company, because they're not all the same, right? So you want to have someone who has been there, done that, but also is respected, so that when they are in the room you're not in and they say something about you, it carries weight and it carries that level of credibility. To your point of they're just hoping that, the majority of companies that I've been at have either recommended a mentor or encouraged me to talk to 3 people and say, one of these 3 would be a great mentor for you, right, as you continue to navigate and move up. But you hit it right on the head. You've got to be purposeful, and you've got to understand what are you trying to accomplish. Because if it's relationship management, if it's C-suite awareness and presentation, is it back office or kind of back channel communications to get things done. One of the best lessons I learned from one of my mentors, and when I say it now out loud, it's so funny to me because it's common sense to me now, but 15 years ago it wasn't. And it was a simple one. It was, Keith, if you're going to present something for approval, if you're going to request something, when you walk into that meeting with those senior leaders, that should not be the first time they see this. Yes. And you should have already got your support lined up. So when you walk in, you should know that 3/4 of this room is already on my side. We're ready to rock and roll. And if you have a couple of dissenters, you can kind of work through that, rather than I used to walk into a room and be like, here you go. Here's what I want to do. Okay, that's fine. Give me a week to process all this, and then give us a week to have the back channel conversations that you should have had beforehand. And then we'll come back to you. And again, saying it now, it's like, that's just common sense. Why wasn't I doing that before? But it's there, right? And that's one of those small things that, I kind of picked up.
One of my favorite quotes is, common sense isn't common. Because I learned the same thing, the meeting before the meeting.
Yep.
But every time I teach this to groups, I swear there's always at least a quarter of the room who says, what? Yep. Oh, I should talk to you before I present information.
And, I actually asked my mentor why. I asked why a lot. And he said it very simply. He said, Keith, you're looking at this presentation from your eyes, from your environment, from your business outcomes, and from your goals. It's almost impossible for you to put yourself into someone else's shoes at the VP level to say, how does this impact them? Because you don't know everything that they have going on. You don't have visibility to their 3-year roadmap and their strategic plan and their budget and their IT kind of commitments already. So by doing that, you allow it to kind of soak in a little bit. and you can get some of that feedback and kind of, prepare yourself. And the light went on for me there because I was viewing it as, this is my silo. I need to do this. I need your approval. Give me your approval and I can move on. So that really, really helped me. But it's still, I still forget about it sometimes. I have a meeting today that I sent the deck out a few days ago. I try to remind myself. There are times I'm like, ooh, I'm going to go ask for something. And this may be a surprise to some folks.
Can I ask you one of my other questions I'd love to ask is, what is a hard truth you had to learn that made you a better executive leader? What is a hard truth you had to learn that made you a better executive leader?
While results are very, very critical and they're paramount to success, how you get those results is almost as important as the results themselves. Did you get the results by leaving a trail of, hurt feelings and dead bodies behind you? Or did you get those results by pulling along people, partnering, collaborating, engaging? How'd you get those? That's probably one that I learned not early on, but I learned it, and it's one that I try to remember, and sticking with that, because it really goes a long way. Because I've seen leaders that have been wildly successful, and if you look at what they've done, you'd say, this person is the epitome of a rock star. You should be promoted 4 times by now. And when people bring up their name, there's a and there's a groan. Right? And then there's also folks that may not have reached that same level of excellency. They're very, very good. But when you say their name, people say, oh, yeah, I just talked to him last week. Yeah, I can give him a call. Yeah, he's great to work with. He's a dear. Hey, yeah, we can figure it out. Like he's always open. And that in your internal currency sometimes weighs more than the fact that you hit all of your numbers and hit all of your KPIs, because how do people feel when they leave you is a strong measurement of success as well.
Preach. We typically teach is that, there's trust. What you're talking about is like that integrity piece, right? Like, do people trust that you have good intentions? Do people trust that you have a good character and intent? And here's the reality is, if they don't trust you, even if you've gotten the results, you're confident, like you said, they're going to do a second take. They may not be the first person they go to for help. Yeah, there is a cost to leaving those trails of dead bodies or broken ankles and things like that because of your inability or unwillingness to think about people.
Yep. Yeah, and it's I'll even say personally for me, it was one that I had to consciously work on, because when you think of things in your own silo, and I'm not perfect. I still kind of find myself reflecting back and saying, oh, I need to kind of widen that up a little bit. But when you do that consistently, people will understand it, and people will realize kind of what you're doing and why you're doing it, and look at it from a win-win.
It's funny though, on that point, I'd love to hear your reactions to this. Our strength is generally also where we have our blind spots. It's because we're not thinking about it. Like, we're really good at this.
Yep.
And so for me, one of my huge blind spots earlier on in my career, I'm very collaborative. I'm just like, hey, let's get everyone's ideas to the table. Let's bring everyone in. I want to get everyone an opportunity to weigh in and so on and so forth. I thought it was a really good thing. Years ago, I had a conversation with one of my team members as they were leaving. We were doing an exit interview, and they said, Alex, one of the problems that we have with you is that you're indecisive. You won't make a decision. And I was like, I'll make a decision. I was trying to give you opportunity to weigh in, but it was like, I guess I was doing it way too much. And they were like, is this guy making a decision? Like, even those things that we think is a good thing, everything in excess can be a challenge.
It can, and for all the listeners and viewers out there, we did not talk about this in advance. I promise you, we didn't. But mine is it's still an opportunity for me, but it's on the opposite side where I had a very high speed limit and I would move toward execution and, cross it off my list and move to the next one. And whether or not it was the right course of action or wrong, it was because I got there so fast and checked it off my box and moved on. There were folks that said, I feel like I don't understand this. I want to talk more about it. I want to kind of maybe bring an idea to the table to kind of talk about it. And so it's interesting that, I was on the opposite end of that, and I have to kind of bring myself back and kind of consciously solicit the other voices and bring folks to the table. And it's a conscious thing for me because I really want to make sure that, I'm doing it right, but also people feel heard. And one of my old bosses, we talked about the example she gave me was directions. And this is for folks that are in the Chicago area, but there's many ways to get to the airport, right? O'Hare, many ways to get there.
Yeah.
And my boss said, Keith, how would you get to the airport? I said, no problem. I take 88 east, get 294 north, right? Exit right there, right? We're there. And she said, Keith, what would you say if someone said they wanted to take these 14 other streets to get to the airport? And I said, that's silly. Why would you do that? It's very inefficient. You got traffic lights, blah, blah, blah. And she said, if you approach it with that first line of thinking of it's wrong, why would you do that? Here's the right way to do it. You're going to lose folks right away. And she said, just ask them, right? Why would you want to take that way? And I said, I'm lost. And she said, well, what if someone said they don't have a I-Pass? So I-Pass out here, it kind of pays all your tolls on the highway. And I said, oh, okay, I guess that would be a reason why they wouldn't want to take the expressway if they didn't have an I-Pass. And she kind of gave me four other reasons, but the message really kind of stuck with me of, take a breath, ask those questions, don't jump to that, highest level of I'm right, you're wrong, and kind of listen a little bit more. And that's something that for me, it's critical. And I still work on it to this day. I'm a naturally semi-impatient person, but I still work on that to this day. But that example really, really jumped out to me, the whole how do we get to the airport idea.
I know we're trying to run up against time. I realize this. I want to put one story out. I'd love to hear your reaction, and I want to open the floor to you. I'm reading this book right now called Built from Scratch. So it's the CEO of Home Depot wrote this book. Really interesting book. And there's this guy named Pat, and he is this black dude. He creates this store called Home Co. And it is just like, it's booming. Like, he creates a store on his own with 50 other employees, and he creates this big home improvement store, and things are just flying off the shelves, and there's so much success. People are coming to look at it, and other people, and the guy who then later becomes the CEO of Home Depot, he hears about it, he goes, sees it, he's, oh my God, this is amazing. He tells his friends, and they're all excited. They say, hey, look, we'd love for you to be a partner with us in the business venture we're going to do. And he's like, oh yeah, let's do it. We'll you'll buy my company. Say, okay, we'll do our due diligence. So start doing due diligence, start looking through the books, and they say, there's a problem. Your organization is not physically safe at all. You probably have about 6 months before you go under.
Wow.
And the guy was just crushed. Like, he was so upset. He said, hey, look, why don't you just close the store, come work with us still. We want you to work with us. And he says, no, all these employees quit their jobs to come work with me. My people who invested in the company, they put money down. I'm going to stick it out and see if I can make it work. So he goes back at it, and 3 months later, he files bankruptcy for him, both him personally and the organization. And he is hurt. And the guy who later becomes the CEO of Home Depot comes back and says, hey man, like, Pat, we really want you on this team. And he's like, why would you want me on this team? Like, I just had this massive, huge failure. And he says, no. The problem is you didn't have us. See, you need us and we need you.
Right.
If we all do this together, we're gonna win. And Obviously Home Depot becomes this massive company, 3 partners, him being one of them. And this reminds me of like how often we're afraid to fail. But if he wouldn't have taken that shot and created this organization, even though he wasn't great at finances, he was great at marketing. And like, I wanted to share that. I'm gonna start talking about the story more often. But I loved it.
Yeah, I love that story. I'm not as familiar with it, but the concept of failure as a springboard is one that resonates with me. And when I speak to younger people in their career, I tell them fail early, right? You don't want to fail late. Fail early and learn from that failure. Because if you're not failing, especially early, you're not really trying. You could kind of just stay on that path and it's a path that you could be on, but you don't learn as much. But if you're able to fail early, rebound from it, learn from it, and in this example that you just gave, the failure was rooted in the right moral place, and so failing like that isn't always a failure. It may be an expensive lesson that has repaid itself a million times over by now, but in that moment, it was a really, really painful, hard lesson. But when you look back at it, and as we talk about books, right, and looking back at it, and looking back at kind of the things that happen that kind of have that ripple. I'm currently reading Revenge of the Tipping Point. Malcolm Gladwell, love him, right? One of my favorite artists of all time, and still kind of getting through the book. But he tells a story and weaves it where you don't know where it's going. It's all factual, based off of kind of, world events, business events. And I just went through the first 2 chapters. And when you get to the end of the chapter, you're like, wow, like this was the tipping point here. And it kind of led to all these sort of ripples that ended up, having us here. And sometimes failure can be that ripple. It can be that tipping point that you don't think about in the moment. And then later on, you're like, that's how we got here. It was a valuable lesson. And I'm still here better for it.
Keith, thank you so much for being here and sharing your thoughts, your ideas. I want to open the floor for you. Is there anything you'd like to share with the audience as we begin to wrap up?
Number one, really, really appreciate this time and the invitation. This has been a blast. I think we covered a lot of what I kind of had, on my list. I will say, I really don't want to minimize the importance of mentoring. Either be a mentor if you can, get a mentor if you can. It's not to provide strict direction. It gives you a great, sounding board. So I think that's the biggest thing I love to leave, anytime I do interviews or anything like that, is that power of having a mentor is great. And I can't really emphasize that anymore. But other than that, this has been an amazing time. Love talking to you. Glad to hear that you're feeling better now, and that cough is gone. So appreciate everything.
And again, thank you so much for sharing everything you shared. You made me think of one last thing, which I'll say before we start to wrap up. First, if y'all haven't done so already, click that like button. You're not getting away with this. But I tell my wife and I were having this conversation a few weeks ago about how, just things hadn't gone her way in a few different instances. And I was like, sweetheart, but if you really think about it, every good thing you have in your life came after something that was difficult, that you thought was just so harmful, so bad, so whatever it is. Like, it's really, people don't tend to do that. Like, if you think like where you are right now, if you're in a happy and good space, you can probably look somewhere in your past where something happened and it created a ripple. If this wouldn't have happened, this wouldn't happen. Like, for me, honestly, if my biological father wouldn't have left me when I was a few days old, like, I was hurt for a long time. Like, I'm still, I guess, if I'm being honest, I'm still psychologically, emotionally hurt about it. But if he wouldn't have left, then I would have been I would have been overseas with him. And that means I wouldn't have been to the college I went to. That means I would have never met my wife. I would have never had my son, right? And so, Yeah, I was trying to encourage people, like when they're going through a difficult time, yes, it hurts, it's uncomfortable, all those things. Know that you are strong enough to survive it because you've survived hard things before. And you know that because you're here today. And
Yep.
two, at some point, you're going to look back and say, wow, if that thing wouldn't have happened, I wouldn't have done this, which would have ended up here. So I know I just put that out there, Keith. You want to say anything before we wrap up?
Yeah, that concept right there, I like to tell people that a step backwards has less momentum than a step forward. And so even if you go through something, whether it's a failure or any sort of negative issue, that step back does not have to have momentum, but the steps forward do. So if you keep the momentum going forward, you're going to go backwards every now and then. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
Don't allow it to kind of stack on top itself. Don't allow it to have momentum. Take it, absorb it, and then push that momentum forward. That's a great story. I appreciate you sharing that.
Thank you, sir. Keith Parris, you are an amazing individual. Everyone, thank you so much for following us and being engaged in these conversations. Please share your thoughts in the comments section. Again, you know where I'm going with this. Don't just look back, reach back. If you found anything of value, which I know you did in this episode, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with at least one person today. All you have to do is click the like or click the share. Either way, you'll help positively impact someone else's life. So as always, you know where I'm going with this. I encourage you to stay strong, stay positive, and definitely stay moving. See ya. Thanks for listening to The Executive Appeal with Alex Tremble. I invite you to follow The Executive Appeal wherever you listen to podcasts. Follow me, your host, Alex Tremble, across all socials or via email for exclusive webinars, courses, and speaking engagements on continued topics of executive leadership. So until next time, stay strong, stay positive, and definitely stay moving.